The air inside the docking bay of Drift 9 smelled of metal and ozone. Ships came and went every hour, bringing travelers from every corner of the known systems. Among them stood Ben, a 21-year-old human student from Earth. He carried a single duffel bag and a nervous smile. This was his first day as part of the Galactic Exchange Program, and he was about to meet his new roommate for the next 6 months. Drift 9 was more than a space station. It was a floating university orbiting a quiet blue gas giant. Every corridor echoed with voices of different languages, and lights shifted softly to adjust for the vision of every species on board. To Ben, everything looked new and alive, full of stories he could barely imagine. He checked his datapad again to make sure he was in the right section. The housing deck was a maze of shining doors and color-coded panels. Room C27. His heart beat faster when he saw it. According to the assignment, his roommate was someone named Relo, from a planet called Drithin. Ben had never heard of it. The orientation note said Drithin life forms were warm-blooded humanoids with adaptive skin structures. That sounded harmless enough. He took a deep breath and pressed the door control. The panel slid open with a soft sound and warm air rushed out. The room was already half full of luggage. Crates marked with alien symbols lined one wall, and strange crystal spheres floated gently above them, glowing like tiny lanterns. Then Ben froze. Standing in the middle of the room was a tall figure with smooth bronze-colored skin, large silver eyes, and absolutely no clothes, not a single thread. The being turned, smiled brightly, and extended both hands in greeting. "Hello, human roommate," the alien said with cheerful tone. "I am Rilo of the Drift." Ben blinked several times, his brain trying to decide whether to speak or hide behind his bag. He managed a weak smile. "Hi, Rilo, I'm Ben, welcome." Rilo tilted his head. "Thank you. I have waited for your arrival. I prepared your half of the room." Ben noticed his bed neatly made, his desk organized, and a welcome drink waiting on the table. Rilo seemed kind and helpful, just unaware of one very important thing. Rilo," Ben began carefully. "I think you forgot something." Rilo looked confused. "Forgot what?" "Clothes," Ben said quickly, hoping to sound casual. Rilo glanced down at himself, then looked back at Ben. "Oh, you mean coverings? My species does not wear them. They block airflow and confuse body signals." Ben rubbed the back of his neck. "Right, I get that. But here on the station, most people wear clothes all the time. It's kind of a social rule." Rilo blinked slowly, processing this. "A rule for comfort?" "A rule for privacy," Ben explained. "It's about being polite." Rilo smiled again, unbothered. "Politeness is good. I will study this custom." Ben exhaled and tried to stay calm. He could already imagine what would happen if the other students saw Rilo walking around the hall like that. The Galactic Exchange Program promised to teach cross-species understanding, but this might be more understanding than anyone expected. They spent the next hour unpacking. Rilo hummed a soft tune while setting his glowing crystals around the room. The light made moving shadows on the walls. When Ben asked what they were, Rilo explained they stored emotional energy. "When I feel joy, they shine brighter. When I am calm, they grow still," he said with pride. Ben found that fascinating. Rilo was friendly, curious, and full of strange wisdom about energy and balance. He spoke about the Drift, a great city that floated above his planet's sea of clouds. He said the Drithin people learned early that freedom meant harmony with the air around them. Clothing for them was like a cage for the skin. Ben listened with growing respect, even if he could not stop glancing away awkwardly. Later that evening, the two walked to the cafeteria. Rilo insisted on joining Ben, eager to taste human food. As they entered the main hall, heads turned. Students from dozens of worlds stared in shock. Some whispered, some laughed quietly, and a few quickly looked away. Ben's cheeks burned as he tried to walk normally. "Rilo," he whispered. "People are staring. They observe." Rilo said calmly, "Observation is the beginning of learning." "Yes, but this might not be the kind of lesson they expect." A small group of human students passed by, trying not to laugh. One of them whispered to another, "Is that your new ambassador?" Ben sighed. He grabbed 2 meal trays and guided Rilo to a table in the corner. Rilo studied the food like a scientist examining samples. He poked at mashed potatoes with curiosity, sniffed the steamed vegetables, and took one bite of chicken before declaring it dense but flavorful. He offered Ben a taste of a glowing blue fruit he brought from his homeworld. It tasted like honey and mint, light and refreshing. For a while, Ben forgot his embarrassment. Rilo was genuinely enjoyable to talk to. He asked questions about Earth, cities, oceans, and sports. He laughed at Ben's description of snow and said it sounded like frozen air dust. The alien's joy was contagious. Even a few nearby students began smiling at his enthusiasm. After dinner, they returned to their room. Rilo examined Ben's clothes, touching the fabric curiously. So humans use texture to express identity, he said. Colors and shapes tell others who they are. Ben nodded. Pretty much. Sometimes it's about fashion, sometimes about culture, and sometimes it's just what's clean that day. Rilo thought for a moment. Then I wish to learn your fashion. Maybe I will wear something tomorrow to show I respect your ways. Ben grinned with relief. That's a good idea. As the lights dimmed to night mode, Rilo floated one of his glowing crystals to the center of the room. It helps calm the mind, he explained. The gentle light made the walls shimmer. Ben lay on his bed feeling both exhausted and amazed. He had traveled light years from home and ended up sharing a room with an alien who refused to wear clothes but cared deeply about friendship, and learning morning on Drift 9 began. With a soft hum from the life support systems, Ben woke to find Rilo standing at the window, watching the stars fade as the station rotated toward the gas giant below. The planet's surface glowed with swirls of blue and white. Rilo looked peaceful, almost statuesque. Good morning, human roommate, Rilo said warmly. I have been thinking about your rule of coverings. I do not understand it fully, but I will try. That's all anyone can ask, Ben said, sitting up. We all try to understand each other. Rilo smiled, his eyes reflecting the light of the distant sun. Understanding is the first step toward harmony. Later that day, their first class began. It was a lecture on cross-species communication. Students from 15 different worlds sat together, listening to Professor Ian, a gray-scaled being from Tor. The lesson focused on how different species express comfort or discomfort. Ben thought the timing was perfect. The professor asked for volunteers to share examples from personal experience. Rilo raised his hand without hesitation. I have learned that humans use clothing to show politeness, he announced. At first I found this rule strange, but my roommate Ben has shown patience. I now see that comfort is not only physical but emotional. The class chuckled kindly. The professor nodded. Excellent observation, Rilo. True understanding comes from respect even when customs seem unfamiliar. Ben felt proud, though part of him worried what Rilo might say next. But Rilo sat down gracefully and smiled at him. That small moment eased all tension between them. When the class ended, several students approached to ask Rilo questions about his planet and his crystals. To Ben's surprise, nobody teased him anymore. Rilo's honesty had won them over. Even the human students who laughed before now greeted him with friendly curiosity. By the end of the week, Ben realized how much he had changed. He no longer felt embarrassed by Rilo's habits. He found himself admiring how open-minded and kind his roommate was. When you live among different worlds, he thought, the real challenge is not the rules you follow, but how you learn to see through someone else's eyes. That night, Rilo placed another glowing sphere on the shelf above Ben's desk. This one shines with gratitude, he said. You have shown me respect when many would turn away. Ben smiled. And you've taught me to stop worrying so much. We're both learning. The crystal glowed brighter, filling the room with soft golden light. Outside the window, Drift 9 sailed quietly through space, surrounded by countless stars. Somewhere among them, Earth waited far behind and Drithen floated far ahead. Yet in this small room, two very different beings shared laughter and trust. Rilo turned to Ben with an innocent grin. Tomorrow I will try clothing, he announced proudly. Do you think the cafeteria will notice? Ben laughed. I think the whole station will notice. The alien nodded thoughtfully. Then I must choose something memorable. As the night lights faded, Ben realized that living with Rilo was not just a lesson in patience or cultural exchange. It was a glimpse into what humanity could be among the stars, curious, adaptable, and always ready to learn. The friendship that started with confusion was now glowing brighter than Rilo's crystals, and the adventure on Drift 9 had only just begun. The next morning on Drift 9 began with a faint chime from the intercom. It was the station's morning signal, reminding everyone that classes would start in 1 hour. Ben stretched in his bunk and rubbed his eyes. The room was calm, filled with the soft light of Rilo's glowing crystals. He looked over and saw Rilo standing in front of the mirror, holding a long sheet of silver fabric. It shimmered in the air like liquid metal. Rilo's expression was serious, as if he were preparing for an important mission. "Good morning, Rilo," Ben said with a yawn. "What are you doing with that?" Rilo turned with pride. "I am studying human fashion. I decided to wear something today to honor your culture. I have been reading about garments on the station database." Ben smiled. "That's great. So what are you making?" "I am designing a comfort wrap," Rilo said. "It is inspired by the concept of a robe. I believe this will satisfy the social rule of coverings." He tried to wrap the shiny fabric around his body, but it kept slipping off. After a few minutes of struggling, Rilo looked puzzled. "It refuses to stay in place," he said. Ben tried not to laugh. "That's because you need fasteners or stitching. Clothes need shape so they don't fall." "Fasteners?" Rilo repeated. "Yeah," Ben said, opening his drawer and pulling out a small clip from his bag. "Like this. You hold the fabric together with something like buttons, ties, or clips." Rilo examined the clip as though it were a piece of advanced technology. "Humans are clever," he said with admiration. "You invented ways to keep your coverings loyal to your body." Ben chuckled. "I guess that's one way to say it." After several attempts, Rilo managed to create something that looked like a shiny toga. It covered enough to keep attention away, though it still looked like a piece of space art. When they left the room, several students smiled as they passed. Rilo held his head high with pride. As they walked through the corridors, Rilo asked endless questions about fabrics, colors, and human preferences. "Why do some humans wear dark colors while others wear bright ones?" he asked. Ben thought for a moment. "It's about personality, mood, or sometimes the situation. Dark colors are calm or serious. Bright ones show energy." Rilo nodded thoughtfully. "So clothing is a reflection of feeling." "Yeah, you could say that." When they reached the main hub of Drift 9, Rilo's attention was caught by the interspecies market. The glowing signs and rows of stalls stretched along the circular walkway. Traders from dozens of worlds sold items from their home planets. The air smelled of spices, oils, and strange minerals. Rilo's eyes widened with excitement. "Ben, may we explore?" "I wish to understand this world of fabric," Ben laughed. "Sure, but don't get too distracted. We have class later." The two entered the market. A soft mist floated from one stall where a vendor sold plant-based threads that changed color with heat. Another sold fibers from ocean creatures that shimmered like scales. Every fabric told a story of the world it came from. Rilo touched everything with wonder. "This one feels alive," he said, brushing his fingers over a red cloth that rippled under his touch. "That's reactive silk," Ben explained. "It changes texture based on body temperature." "Humans are artists of sensation," Rilo said. "Your creations speak through feeling," Ben smiled. "You make it sound more poetic than it is. We just like being comfortable." Rilo picked up a folded tunic made of soft material and held it up. "This would be perfect for study sessions," he said. "It looks free and breathable." The shopkeeper, a short insectoid being with bright green eyes, chirped happily. "That fabric is popular with Terrans. It stretches and keeps you warm." 2 credits apiece, Rilo turned to Ben. "Is that a good exchange?" Ben shrugged. "Not bad. If you like it, get it." Rilo nodded and handed over a small glowing coin. When he put on the tunic, the fit was loose but comfortable. He turned to Ben and asked, "Do I look polite now?" Ben grinned. "You look great, Rilo." Rilo smiled proudly. "Then I have achieved cultural harmony." They spent another hour wandering through the market. Rilo asked about shoes, hats, and gloves, though he decided that covering his hands and feet felt unnatural. He bought a pair of trousers, but wore them backward at first until Ben helped him fix it. Other shoppers smiled kindly at the sight. As they walked back, Ben noticed how quickly Rilo adapted. The alien learned not by copying but by understanding. He didn't just wear clothing to blend in. He tried to learn the meaning behind it. When they reached the cafeteria, Rilo walked in with his new outfit and greeted everyone cheerfully. A group of students waved and some even complimented his choice. Rilo thanked them with a small bow, his crystals glowing softly in approval. During lunch, Ben taught him about matching colors and styles. Rilo listened carefully, taking notes on his data pad. "It is amazing how much thought humans give to outer appearance," he said. "Where I come from, we share our feelings directly through skin colors and patterns. When I am happy, my skin shines brighter. When I am sad, it grows pale. We cannot hide emotion. Ben found that fascinating. That's actually really honest. Humans hide emotions all the time. Why? Rilo asked with curiosity. Because sometimes it's easier, Ben said quietly. People get hurt if you show everything. Rilo nodded slowly. Then maybe your clothes are your way of showing what you can safely share. Ben blinked in surprise. He had never thought of it like that. You might be right, he said with a small smile. Later that day, they attended a workshop on cross-cultural design. Students were paired to create something that represented both of their worlds. Ben and Rilo decided to make a hybrid garment combining Drithan air threads and human cotton. The project quickly became a hit. Rilo's understanding of airflow helped them design a jacket that adjusted temperature automatically. The instructor praised their creativity. This is a fine example of interspecies cooperation, she said. You combined practicality and cultural meaning beautifully. Rilo's eyes brightened with pride. We call it the Harmony Jacket, he said. It carries the air of my home and the comfort of Ben's world. After class, several students approached to ask if they could try it. Rilo happily explained the design, showing how the fiber shifted in response to body heat. Ben stood beside him, amazed at how confident Rilo had become. That evening, when they returned to their room, Rilo placed the Harmony Jacket on the table with care. This was a good day, he said. I learned that clothing can speak as loudly as words. Ben nodded. You did great today. I think you're starting to understand humans better than some humans do. Rilo smiled warmly. It is because you are patient, Ben. You teach with kindness. Ben laughed. You make it easy, Rilo. You're curious about everything. I must be, Rilo said. Curiosity is the wind that keeps us drifting. Later that night, they sat by the window again, watching the glowing storms of the gas giant below. The sight filled the room with soft light. Rilo leaned forward and said, I have noticed something, Ben. When humans cover themselves, they also decorate. It is not just about protection. It is about identity. You wear who you are. Ben nodded thoughtfully. That's true. The way you dress can say something about what you believe or what kind of person you want to be. Rilo smiled. Then maybe I will create my own fashion style. It will mix Drethan freedom with human respect, Ben grinned. That sounds perfect. You'll start a new trend on the station. The next morning, Rilo worked on his idea. He gathered scraps of fabric from their project and pieces of reactive silk from the market. By afternoon, he had built something entirely unique. The outfit shimmered like moving air, but had human-style seams and fastenings. It was comfortable, elegant, and respectful. When he walked out of their room, heads turned again, but this time in admiration. Even the station commander noticed and smiled. That's a fine design, Student Rilo. A true example of cultural unity, she said. Rilo bowed politely. Thank you, Commander. I have learned much from my human friend. Ben felt proud watching him. The same alien who had arrived with no idea of human customs was now inspiring others. That evening, the two friends returned to their room. Rilo placed one of his crystals beside the Harmony Jacket. The light from the crystal glowed softly, turning gold and blue together. This crystal records shared joy, Rilo explained. It shines when both people feel proud. Ben smiled. Then it's glowing for both of us. Rilo nodded. Yes, today I understand that wearing something is not about hiding but sharing. Every thread tells a story, and I am grateful to learn yours. Ben leaned back, looking out the window. You know, Rilo, you might just be the most stylish alien in the galaxy now. Rilo laughed gently. Then I shall continue learning. Tomorrow we will study human shoes. Ben groaned with a smile. That might take all day. As the lights dimmed and the stars shimmered outside Drift 9, the room filled with peaceful silence. Two worlds had found harmony in something as simple as fabric. And in that moment, the vast galaxy felt a little smaller and a little warmer. The lesson in fabric had become a lesson in friendship, understanding, and respect. Would you like me to continue with Part 3, Trouble in the Habitat, next? Written in the same... The morning on Drift 9 started quietly. Sunlight filtered through the large observation windows, casting soft beams over the floating corridors of the station. Ben and Rilo had just finished breakfast when an alert sounded through the intercom. A soft but urgent tone indicated a malfunction in the habitat systems. Rilo perked up immediately. Ben, something is wrong, he said. The station's life support may be affected. Ben frowned. I think it's just a minor system glitch. But we should check. They hurried toward the habitat control room. As they passed other students, the lights flickered slightly. Some people were already gathering near emergency panels. A human technician called out, "The thermal regulators are failing. Temperature in the living areas is dropping rapidly. Everyone must prepare for cold conditions." Ben's stomach tightened. "We need to move fast," he said. Relo nodded, his eyes reflecting the blinking red lights of the alert panels. "I have not experienced low temperatures in this form. My skin is adapted to warm air, not cold." Ben quickly ran to a storage locker and grabbed blankets and emergency jackets. "We need to help the other students get warm," he said. "You too, Relo. You must cover yourself fully." Relo shivered, the first real sign of discomfort since arriving. "This is unusual," he admitted. He quickly pulled on the emergency jacket over his tunic, and Ben wrapped a blanket around him. The temperature in the corridors was dropping fast. The normally warm air now felt like biting wind. Ben and Rilo moved through the halls, helping smaller and less experienced students put on thermal suits. Rilo's calm and organized nature made him surprisingly effective. He guided students to safe zones and explained how to stay warm. "This blanket covers more airspace," Rilo explained to a young alien student from Talaris. "Heat is trapped and cold does not enter. Wrap yourself tightly." The Talaris student nodded and followed Rilo's instructions carefully. Ben watched, impressed by how quickly Rilo adapted to the emergency. In the control room, technicians were frantically pressing buttons and checking monitors. Ben stayed close to Rilo, watching the screens flicker with red and orange warnings. "Looks like a software glitch caused the thermal regulators to misfire," one technician explained. "If we do not stabilize it soon, sections of the station could drop below freezing." Rilo's eyes widened. "Then speed is essential." "Delay may be dangerous," Ben nodded. "Exactly. Let's help wherever we can." The technicians assigned them to assist with manual temperature controls in the residential section. They ran down long corridors, connecting portable heat generators and checking that emergency doors were sealed. Rilo moved gracefully, even in the bulky thermal jacket. His glowing crystals floated behind him, casting gentle light that helped guide them in the dim hallways. As they worked, Ben noticed how Rilo studied every mechanism with curiosity. "This is very different from your planet, isn't it?" he asked. Rilo nodded. "On Drithin, the environment is stable. We do not need machines to manage air or heat. It is adjusted naturally by the planet itself. Here, survival depends on cooperation and technology." Ben smiled. "You're learning fast. Most humans would panic more than you are." Rilo gave a small smile. "I am calm because you are here. Leadership is strengthened when trust exists." By mid-morning, they had stabilized several residential sections. Residents were moved into warmer areas, and the emergency alarms were reduced to a soft warning tone. But the main problem remained. The central thermal core was still malfunctioning. Ben glanced at the monitor. "We need to enter the core chamber. Only a small team can access it safely." Rilo tilted his head. "I will go with you. It is essential to understand the process." Ben nodded. "Okay, stay close. There are safety protocols." They joined the engineering team and stepped into the core chamber. The room glowed with a faint orange light from the overheating circuits. Pipes hissed as steam escaped from malfunctioning valves. Ben's heart pounded, but Rilo remained calm, observing the machinery with intense focus. One technician called out, "The temperature is rising in the main conduit. If we do not reroute the power, it could overload." Rilo moved closer to the panel, studying the control lines. "These pathways resemble the airflow channels on Drithin," he said. "Perhaps redirecting energy through an auxiliary conduit will restore balance." Ben's eyes widened. "That's smart thinking. Can you help me connect the relay?" Rilo nodded. Together, they followed the engineer's instructions. Ben held cables steady while Rilo adjusted the power conduits with precise movements. Sparks flew and steam hissed around them, but the alien's calm determination was contagious. Slowly, the temperature began to stabilize. Alarms stopped and the warning lights dimmed. The chamber was still warm but manageable. The technicians cheered. "You two did well," one engineer said. "That was quick thinking." Rilo bowed slightly. "It is the result of teamwork. The human guided me well." Ben smiled. "You did all the creative thinking. I was just keeping the cable steady." They left the chamber and returned to the residential halls. Students were starting to laugh and talk again, warmed by blankets and emergency suits. Ben felt a sense of relief. What could have been a disaster had turned into a success because everyone worked together. Relo walked beside him, still wrapped in the thermal jacket. "I understand now," he said quietly. "Clothing is not just about politeness or culture. It can protect life." Ben nodded. "Exactly. And sometimes it's about teamwork, too. Knowing what to wear and how to stay safe can save others." They checked the last residential areas, making sure every student was accounted for. Some students approached Relo, curious about how he handled the emergency. They asked questions about his species, his home planet, and his glowing crystals. Relo explained everything patiently, showing that understanding and calm thinking were more valuable than fear. After the crisis was over, Ben and Relo returned to their room. Both were exhausted, but the sense of accomplishment filled the air. Relo set one of his glowing crystals on the desk. It glowed softly, changing colors with their shared sense of relief. "This crystal records courage," Relo said. "It glows when people act with careful thought and bravery." Ben chuckled. "Then it must be shining bright right now." Relo's eyes reflected the light. "Yes, it shows how much humans and aliens can achieve together." Ben leaned back in his chair. "I never imagined we would face something like this on day 2 of clothing lessons." Relo laughed softly. "Then life is full of lessons beyond planning. Sometimes danger teaches faster than books or simulations." Ben nodded. "True, and you handled it better than most humans would have. You stayed calm, thought quickly, and helped others." "I learned from you," Relo said sincerely. "Your guidance allowed me to act correctly." Ben felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the emergency heaters. "We make a good team," he said. Relo's crystals pulsed gently, reflecting the pride in both of them. "Teamwork is the bond that carries civilizations. Today we strengthened it." As evening fell over Drift 9, Ben and Relo stood at the observation window again. The gas giant below shimmered with golden and blue clouds. The space station glided silently, orbiting with precision. Stars glimmered far beyond, distant yet inviting. Relo looked out, his face thoughtful. "Ben, I have realized something important. Clothing and technology are not separate. Both protect and communicate. On Drithin we rely on nature. Here you rely on tools and rules. Both are valid," Ben smiled. "You're learning fast." "That's a big realization." Relo turned to him with a small grin. "And I will continue learning. Tomorrow we may explore fashion further, but today we explored survival." Ben laughed softly. "That might be the most important lesson yet." The room was quiet after their long day, filled with a calm satisfaction. Relo floated a small crystal above his bed, which glowed faintly, recording the day's achievements. Ben lay down, reflecting on the events. He realized that Relo's arrival had brought more than curiosity and confusion. The alien had brought patience, courage, and a fresh perspective that made him see human habits in a new light. In the darkness of space, the two roommates rested. Drift 9 continued its orbit silently, a small haven in the vast galaxy. But for Ben and Relo, the station had become more than a home. It had become a place to grow, learn, and face challenges together. The lesson of the day was clear. Understanding another being was not just about words or customs. It was about acting together when situations demanded it. The emergency had tested them both, and they had succeeded. That success was more than survival. It was proof that humans and aliens could work in harmony, no matter how different they seemed. As the stars shone beyond the observation window, Relo's crystal glowed softly, and Ben closed his eyes. They had faced danger, adapted, and learned. Together, they had made the first steps toward a bond stronger than fear, stronger than culture, and stronger than distance. The adventure on Drift 9 was only beginning. Weeks passed on Drift 9 since the emergency in the habitat. The station had returned to normal routines, but Ben and Relo had grown closer than ever. They shared meals, study sessions, and quiet evenings by the observation windows, talking about Earth, Drithin, and the stars beyond. Relo's clothing experiments had become more ambitious. He now wore garments that combined Drithin style with human fashion, and he proudly displayed his creations to anyone curious. The station announced the annual Interspecies Exchange Banquet. It was a celebration where students from all corners of the galaxy shared their cultures through food, clothing, music, and performance. The announcement excited Relo immensely. He wanted to participate not only to show his understanding of human clothing, but also to honor the customs of every species present. Ben smiled as he watched Rilo prepare. "You really are taking this seriously, huh?" he asked. Rilo's eyes sparkled. "Ben, this is an opportunity to share my learning. It is a chance to honor the rules, the creativity, and the diversity of this station. I want my presentation to be perfect." The banquet hall was enormous. Circular tables filled the space, each dedicated to a different world. Floating platforms allowed performers to display dances, music, or demonstrations from their home planets. Lights shimmered in colors that shifted like oil on water. The smell of alien delicacies filled the air. Rilo walked in first, wearing his latest creation, a luminous tunic with flowing fabric that responded to his movements. Threads from Drithin fibers reflected the room's lights, while human-style seams and patterns gave the outfit structure. The clothing seemed alive, drifting gently with every step. Heads turned immediately. Ben followed behind, carrying a tray of food. Some students whispered, while others stared openly. Yet instead of laughter or surprise, the room filled with admiration. Rilo had found a balance between his alien freedom and human expectations. At the front of the hall, the station commander addressed the students. "Welcome to the annual exchange banquet. Today we celebrate culture, cooperation, and creativity. Every student here represents not only their homeworld, but the possibility of understanding across species." Rilo listened carefully, nodding. "That is the purpose of my presence," he whispered to Ben, "to show that learning and respect can travel across stars." The banquet began with food demonstrations. Students sampled dishes from dozens of worlds. Rilo watched with fascination as humans carefully arranged food on plates. Insects served nutrient gels in geometric patterns, and aquatic species floated edible spheres on suspended trays. He was particularly impressed by the way presentation reflected care and attention, similar to how clothing reflected identity. Soon, the entertainment portion began. Students performed dances, music, and short theatrical pieces. Each performance was unique, yet all shared a common theme: connection. Ben and Rilo watched in awe as performers from distant planets used movement, sound, and light to communicate emotions that words could not express. Finally, it was time for Rilo's presentation. He approached the stage with a calm smile, his crystals floating gently around him, reflecting golden light. The audience fell silent, curious to see what the alien had prepared. Rilo spoke clearly, his voice confident. "Greetings, students of Drift 9. I am Rilo from Drithin. I have learned much from my human roommate Ben about your customs and your ways. Today I wish to share not only my clothing but the meaning behind it." He stepped forward, demonstrating the harmony jacket he had created in the workshop. The audience could see the way it shifted with movement, changing texture in response to light and motion. "On my planet, clothing is not necessary, but it can express care and respect. With Ben's guidance, I combined human practicality with Drithin freedom to create this design. It is a symbol of understanding, cooperation, and harmony." Rilo paused, letting the jacket catch the light. The room was quiet, captivated by the elegance and thought behind the creation. He continued, "Every stitch, every fiber tells a story. On Drithin, we share emotions through skin patterns. Here, humans use clothing to show intention, mood, and identity. By learning from each other, we can communicate across differences without fear." Ben watched, proud of his friend. He could see the impact Rilo's words had on the audience. Students from various species nodded, impressed by the combination of artistry and insight. Rilo then demonstrated how the jacket adjusted with movement. Lights reflected differently on the fabric, and the jacket expanded or contracted slightly to fit perfectly. "It is more than fashion," Rilo explained. "It is protection, expression, and connection. Clothing is a bridge between worlds." Applause filled the hall. Students approached afterward to ask questions, compliment the design, and even request demonstrations of how the reactive fibers worked. Rilo answered each inquiry patiently, explaining both the technical and cultural aspects. Ben leaned closer and whispered, "I think you've started a trend here." Rilo grinned. "Perhaps, but my goal is understanding, not popularity." As the evening continued, other students displayed their clothing or objects from home. Rilo observed and compared. Some garments used vibrant colors to convey status, while others used subtle patterns to indicate family lineage. Music and movement often accompanied clothing to complete the story. Relo realized that humans' attention to detail was similar in purpose to Drithan patterns, though expressed differently. During a break, Ben and Relo walked to the observation window overlooking the gas giant. Lights shimmered over the clouds and stars twinkled beyond. The calm after the performance allowed both to reflect on the day. Ben, Relo said thoughtfully, I understand now that clothing is not limitation. It is an opportunity. Each item can express identity, intention, and care. I see why humans value it so much. Ben nodded. You've learned a lot. And you've shared your world too. You've shown everyone here that understanding is more important than imitation. Relo smiled. I wish to continue sharing. Perhaps tomorrow I will design another garment combining music, light, and texture. Humans love expression in many forms, Ben laughed. You never stop surprising me. The banquet resumed with music and dance. Students from Drithan, Terran, Talaris, and many other planets demonstrated cooperative performances. Rilo's contribution inspired others to try combining their cultural practices with new ideas. He even assisted some students with ideas for reactive fabrics or costume design. Later, at the banquet's closing, the station commander addressed the students again. Today we have witnessed creativity, understanding, and collaboration. Each of you has shown that differences are not obstacles but opportunities. Let us continue to learn from each other, share knowledge, and grow together. Relo watched the students applaud, his crystals glowing in response to the collective joy. He turned to Ben and said, This is more than a banquet. It is proof that harmony is possible when curiosity and respect guide actions. Ben smiled, feeling a sense of wonder. You've made more than friends tonight. You've inspired people to think differently. Relo nodded, still calm and collected. And I have learned more than I imagined. The human way of life has depth, meaning, and beauty. Sharing it has strengthened my understanding of both our worlds. After the banquet, the students returned to their dormitories. Ben and Relo walked back to their room, carrying samples of fabrics and notes for future experiments. The night was quiet, the corridors lit softly by the station lights. Drift 9 orbited silently, a calm presence in the vast expanse of space. In their room, Relo placed a crystal next to the Harmony jacket. This crystal record shared admiration, he said. It shines when people are inspired by mutual respect. Ben grinned. Then it must be glowing like never before. Relo chuckled softly. Yes, tonight has shown that clothing is not just protection or fashion. It can tell stories, build understanding, and connect hearts. Ben nodded, reflecting on the day. Relo had started as a naive alien unfamiliar with human customs. Now he had become a symbol of what the Galactic Exchange Program aimed to teach: cooperation, curiosity, and respect for differences. As they settled near the observation window, watching the stars drift silently past, Relo said, Tomorrow we will continue our experiments with fabric design and expression. But today we have celebrated unity. Ben smiled. Yes, and I think everyone at the banquet will remember it. Relo's crystals glowed brighter, filling the room with gentle light. Memories are recorded not only in mind but in feeling. Tonight is remembered by many hearts. Ben leaned back, watching the stars. Drift 9 seemed larger than ever, full of possibilities and new friends. And in the quiet room, two beings from very different worlds shared a sense of accomplishment, joy, and connection. The banquet had been more than a cultural exchange. It had been a celebration of understanding, patience, and creativity. It had shown that humans and aliens working together could inspire one another, build bridges, and create something beautiful. The days following the exchange banquet were calm, but full of quiet excitement for Ben and Relo. Their friendship had grown stronger, built on patience, curiosity, and shared experiences. Rilo's experiments with clothing had gained attention from students and teachers alike. He now wore garments that combined Drithan freedom and human style, each outfit reflecting both his personality and respect for the worlds around him. Ben entered their room one morning and found Relo sitting cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by strips of fabric and floating crystals. Good morning, Relo, Ben said. What are you working on today? Relo looked up with bright eyes. Good morning, Ben. I am creating a new design. It is inspired by music, movement, and emotion. I want to show that clothing can tell a story without words. Ben smiled. That sounds impressive. Can I help? You can help with color coordination, Rilo said. Humans have a special relationship with color. I want to make sure this design communicates the intended feelings. Together, they selected fabrics and combined textures. Rilo experimented with reactive fibers that shifted color depending on movement. He weaved tiny floating crystals into the garment to glow softly with the wearer's emotional state. Ben helped match shades to express warmth, trust, and calmness. The process was slow, but both enjoyed the collaboration. Do you think people will understand this? Ben asked, adjusting a shimmering blue patch. Rilo paused. Some may understand immediately. Others may need time. The meaning is in the experience, not in immediate comprehension. The important part is sharing intention and care. The work continued through the morning with occasional breaks to watch the space beyond the observation window. Drift 9 glided silently past the blue and white swirls of the gas giant below. The stars twinkled in the distance, constant yet distant. Ben and Rilo both felt the quiet majesty of the universe, a reminder of how small yet meaningful their efforts were. When the garment was complete, it shimmered like a living creature. The fibers shifted gently, responding to the room's light. The crystals floated lightly around it, casting a soft glow. Rilo examined it carefully. It is ready. This design will tell a story of harmony and cooperation. Ben nodded in approval. You've outdone yourself, Rilo. This is beautiful. The next day, the two decided to present the garment to other students in the station. They arranged a small gathering in the recreation hall. A few curious students from different worlds gathered around as Rilo explained the meaning behind each aspect of the outfit. This fabric changes with movement, Rilo demonstrated, stepping slowly. It reflects calm when movement is slow and joy when movement is lively. The crystals indicate emotional state. The wearer does not need words to share feeling. They communicate through presence and intention. Students were fascinated. A young alien from Talaris stepped forward. This is incredible, she said. Your design shows care and thought. It is not only beautiful, but meaningful. Rilo bowed slightly. Thank you. That is the purpose of this design, to share understanding, respect, and connection. Ben watched as more students approached, asking questions and expressing admiration. He noticed smiles forming across faces of all species. The room was filled with curiosity, respect, and fascination. Rilo's effort to understand human customs and combine them with his own traditions had created something greater than clothing. It had created a shared experience. Later, the two returned to their room, carrying the garment carefully. Rilo placed it on a stand near the window. The crystals floated above it, glowing softly. This garment records joy and understanding, Rilo explained. When someone feels respect or curiosity, the light increases. Ben smiled. Then it must be glowing brightly right now. Rilo laughed gently. Yes, it is a reflection of shared connection. Every time humans and aliens cooperate, even in small things, this light will shine. The days passed, and the station continued its normal rhythm. Ben and Rilo studied, completed assignments, and assisted other students. Their collaboration had become a model for other roommates and friends. People noticed that curiosity, patience, and kindness could lead to remarkable results. Drift 9 had become a place where differences were celebrated, not feared. One evening, Ben and Rilo sat near the observation window again, looking out at the gas giant. Do you think we have done enough to inspire others? Ben asked quietly. Rilo shook his head. Inspiration is not a matter of completion. It is a continuous process. Today we inspire, tomorrow we continue. That is how learning grows. Ben nodded thoughtfully. I understand, but I feel proud of what we have done. Rilo smiled. Pride is natural when effort leads to understanding. You have been patient, thoughtful, and kind. That is why we succeeded together. Ben leaned back, watching the lights of the station reflect across the clouds of the giant below. You've taught me more than I thought possible. I never expected to learn so much from an alien roommate. Rilo tilted his head. And I have learned much from you. Humanity has depth, curiosity, and creativity. You share without expectation, and you teach without judgment. That is a rare gift. A soft hum from the room filled the silence. Rilo's floating crystals pulsed gently, recording the calm and happiness they both felt. Our friendship is like this crystal, Rilo said. It shines when we share, when we learn, and when we support each other. Ben smiled. Then it will shine forever. Weeks later, the exchange program's term was nearing its end. Students were preparing to return to their homeworlds. Drift 9 felt quieter as families, friends, and visitors departed. Ben realized that the experience had changed him deeply. He had grown more patient, more understanding, and more aware of the beauty of cooperation. Rilo packed carefully, folding his remaining garments and crystals. Ben, he said softly, I must return to Drithen soon, but I will carry all that I have learned here. Your guidance has given me tools to share with my people. Ben felt a pang of sadness. I'll miss you, Rilo. You've become more than a roommate. You're a friend. Rilo smiled gently. And you, Ben, are a friend to me. I will return. One day, and when I do, we will continue our shared exploration of knowledge, fashion, and understanding. The day of departure arrived. Ben accompanied Rilo to the docking bay. The ship that would take him back to Drithen gleamed under the station lights. Other students gathered to say farewell, waving and exchanging gifts. Rilo stepped onto the ship platform, carrying his garments and crystals carefully. Thank you, all of you, he said. You have shown me curiosity, patience, and kindness. I will remember this always. Ben shook his hand firmly. Take care, Rilo. And remember, you can always explore new ideas wherever you go. Rilo nodded. Yes, and I will. Our worlds are far, but understanding makes distance smaller. As the ship's engines hummed, Rilo turned to wave one last time. His glowing crystals reflected the station lights, shimmering like stars. Ben waved back, feeling pride and warmth. The alien who had arrived with no knowledge of clothing had left a mark not just on Drift 9 but on Ben's heart. After Rilo's departure, Ben returned to their room. The space felt emptier, but he smiled as he looked at the Harmony jacket and other garments they had created together. The floating crystals glowed softly, reminding him of their shared experiences. Every lesson, every laugh, every challenge now held meaning. Ben realized that the Galactic Exchange Program had achieved more than teaching customs. It had built connections between beings of different worlds. He understood that humanity's strength was not in technology alone, but in curiosity, cooperation, and the willingness to reach out across differences. Weeks later, Ben walked through Drift 9's corridors and saw other students trying small experiments inspired by Rilo's designs. Reactive fabrics, cooperative projects, and cross-species collaborations were now common. He felt pride in knowing that one alien roommate could inspire such change. One evening, Ben sat by the observation window, looking at the distant stars. Rilo would like this, he said quietly. He would say that understanding makes the galaxy smaller. As he gazed at the stars, a calm certainty filled him. No matter how far the world stretched, the bonds they had built could carry across light years. Cooperation, curiosity, and respect were universal. That was the lesson of Drift 9. That was the essence of humanity among the stars. In the quiet room, Ben smiled and whispered, "Thank you, Rilo, for teaching me, for inspiring me, and for showing me that friendship knows no bounds."